Welcome to the channel, folks. Mr. H here to discuss the ending of Us. And I'm just recording this after the fact. I didn't say spoilers, so clearly, obviously, I'm discussing the ending of the film. So full spoilers, because I will reference some bits and pieces that are set up in the film, and I will talk about, obviously, the ending of the film. But if you don't say spoiler warning, everyone gets butthurt anyway. So clearly, full spoilers here. But also, just to say from the top, I also talk about all the plot holes in this movie as well. So if you're not game to listen to plot holes for a movie, if you resoundingly love this film and you're not open to the idea that there's plot holes, it's probably not the video for you. But just thought I'd say that from the top. Apologies, I had to record this in retrospect. This is, of course, Jordan Peele's next film after Get Out, and like Get Out, a lot of people are probably expecting a grand deep dive ending for Us. It's really not as in-depth of a movie as Get Out was, but there is some twists and turns throughout the film which may leave you questioning about the ending, what it means, and how it kind of sets up this universe and just rounds out the film. So that's what I'm going to be discussing today, and hopefully explaining some bits and pieces of the ending. Some of this will be potentially theory, because when we look at the actual details of what they give in the film, it just generates a lot of plot holes. So if we take it on face value, it's probably not actually that good of an ending. But let's get into the ending explained. So Lupita Nyong'o's character, Red, and Adelaide. Adelaide being the woman with the family that we see in the movie and in the trailers. As a child, she attended Santa Cruz Beach and meets her doppelganger, Red. Now, what we learn at the end of the film is that in that moment that they had interacted with one another all those years ago, they had actually exchanged places. So the Adelaide as a child that we initially meet is not the Adelaide that we see as an adult. That is, in fact, the doppelganger. Now, what is explained earlier in the film is that these doppelgangers are a failed government experiment. A government experiment designed to control the population above. The entire film is a conspiracy theory film. Now, Adelaide, or Red, the doppelganger version of Adelaide, is somewhat different to the rest of the doppelgangers. She has a form of a soul, because it's explained in the film that the doppelganger race doesn't necessarily have a soul or a connection, and that's why it's a failed experiment, because they're unable to control the population above. In fact, the population above controls the doppelgangers down below, so there's not an awful lot of sense as to why they just allowed these doppelgangers to run free down below in the tunnel system. But anyway, as it stands, it would appear that Red, the Adelaide doppelganger, the Adelaide clone per se, has part of a soul, has a part of Adelaide's soul. Because she is unique, she is different. Even as a little girl, as they interacted with one another, she knew she had a different thought process to what Adelaide had. She replaced Adelaide, she pulled her into the underground lab and chained her up and basically gave her her life. Now, this explains what we have during the film, where we see Adelaide going through the PTSD. It's not actually Adelaide, it is the doppelganger learning how to talk. She wasn't able to talk before that, so it explains why we see the parents going, oh, she has PTSD, she needs to learn through dance and all these kind of things. So it's not PTSD, she is quite literally just learning how to communicate and how to talk. That's why she is different. She, in fact, is a completely different person. And there's a few things which kind of set up this whole conspiracy theory plot narrative during the film. We see the child mentioning about fluoride in the waters, and we see all of the coincidental moments during the movie as well. So as the film starts to round itself out, this is what is explained, is that just Adelaide swapped with Red. Now, there are some theories as to the Tethered's universe, their world, is that potentially you're going into another dimension, because of course when you go up and down the escalator, maybe that's symbolic of going through a dimensional portal of some sort, which in theory would actually make a little bit more sense, other than just government had created doppelgangers down underneath the United States. But the entire plan of Red, or should we say Adelaide, is that she wanted to rise up make a statement and to show the world who the Tethered were by doing the only thing she had clung on to throughout all those years, something which we had shown at the start of the film. The very start of the film, we see the Tethered, the long chain of millions of Americans holding one another's hands all across the country of the United States. Now, this is symbolic of the Tethered uniting and essentially in peaceful protest. I guess you could say they're not rising up to destroy the world or anything along those lines, although they wanted to destroy those that they were tethered with. Now, the other main question a lot of people may have as they go around this film is how Adelaide kind of convinced the other Tethered that she was unique and became their leader. Well, what we see is that Adelaide and Red were dancing. Now, it's kind of hinted at during the film that this is something which is learned further down the line by Adelaide after the PTSD situation, but it's actually something which she had already done and she was being encouraged to do more. Now, this is something which Adelaide was doing down below as she had replaced the doppelganger, and thus the above ground character had then copied it and just mimicked the movements. So overall, as an ending, we see the Tethered rising up, holding hands all across the country. And the main thing to explain here is just that Adelaide and Red had actually just swapped places. Now, as I say, the main theories are actually a little bit more compelling rather than the story itself as it explains it. Because, of course, if we're talking about doppelgangers, there's an awful lot which just generates a copious amount of plot holes. A lot of it pertaining to the clothing that they're all wearing, because it would appear that this is a failed government experiment. It's been failed for some time. So how on earth do all of the people have very, very similar clothing on? Where are they getting it from? Also, how are they pairing up? Are they just mimicking them in terms of that? That's potentially something which would make sense, but then as we get further down the line, why are they having children exactly the same? Doesn't really make an awful lot of sense, because yes, they're tethered, but the act of procreation means that there's potentially a supernatural element involved to ensure that they would always conceive at the exact same time. But in terms of what they set up, where the two Lupita Nyong'os, Red and Adelaide, were discussing the life of the Tethered and how born of shadows and how you birthed a beautiful child and I birthed a monster. How was it setting up this mirror world but then not delivering on it? So there's an awful lot which this film sets up, but where we get the payoff being a government experiment, it really isn't that good of an explanation. It would have much preferred it, from my personal perspective anyway, to have continued down the narrative of having a form of a mirror world, maybe a dimension, maybe the escalator being this dimensional symbolism anyway, of them entering this kind of mirror world, similar to Stranger Things. I guess you could kind of compare it to something where there's just like an evil version down below. It would have made a lot more sense rather than failed government experiment still alive. That part to me didn't really make an awful lot of sense. But that's as far as I'm willing to kind of delve into the theories and the explanation as such. I've just released my review of this movie. A lot of people are crapping all over my review saying I loved it. Look, I like the film in terms of its stylistic elements. I thought it looked great. I just feel the story was very, very weak with copious amounts of plot holes. But anyway, guys, what do you think about this? Did you like this movie? Did you dislike this movie? Have you seen my review of Us? If you haven't, I'll leave it down below in the description box. I'll leave a link to it there. Go check it out. You can tell me how wrong I am, or maybe I will change your mind on certain bits and pieces. Maybe I've changed your mind with this ending explained. Anyway, guys, I don't normally do these, but I thought I would just jump on here because it's an opportunity to kind of explain some of the plot holes. And also just justify my movie review, I guess. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please do give it a like and a share. If you're new here, hit subscribe. And to stay up to date on all the world of pop culture, movie news, and movie reviews, smash that bell notification icon. As always, thank you so much for watching. I've Mr. H. Take care.